But on a more serious note, I'm also giving away this autographed Brandon Royval card. Anybody who messages me on Twitter and either sends me a screenshot of them following the MMA pickers or any losing bet slip from last week or any winning one, you'll be entered into this raffle, and I will announce the winner on stream here next Friday. So get you a nice free Brandon Royval autograph. Okay. That's my retribution to you folks for UFC 312. Now let's dive in. Okay. So first fight, we have Jacqueline Cavalcanti is fighting Julia Avila. Jacqueline Cavalcanti, there's not really much to say about this fight. The two things I'll say is it's extremely likely that it goes the difference, and Jacqueline Cavalcanti is a minus 700 favorite, and appropriately. Maybe not a minus 700 she should be, but she should be a pretty sizable favorite after her recent performances, especially against Andrade. If you want to take the over 2.5 and use it as a parlay piece, you certainly can, but there's just not a lot of meat on the bones here. Next fight up, we have Donatel Mays. He's fighting heavyweight brother of Johnny Walker, Walter Walker. And Walter Walker's very irregular heavyweight. He definitely prefers to wrestle and grapple. He's definitely had a good amount of success in that department so far. Had a very controversial loss his first fight in the UFC. Recently beat one of the Taffa brothers via heel hook, which you definitely don't see a lot at heavyweight. So he's definitely a submission threat on the ground. While he will be giving up a little bit of size to Donatel Mays, don't read into that too much. He's been looking huge. His last fight, he hit the full weight limit. And I suspect he'll be cutting to 265 this fight. Donatel Mays is obviously going to be a risk to knock him out, but we haven't seen Donatel Mays knock somebody out in a little while. Walter Walker tends to wet blanket people. Like I said, he is a submission threat. But Donatel Mays trains in a good gym. He trains in Jackson Wink. He's trained with the likes of John Jones. He was one of his sparring partners coming up from heavyweight, and he's displayed really, really good submission defense. I'm going to say a good pick here. You can get the Walter Walker money line from minus 250. I don't love that money line personally, but if you go to the winning methods section, you can get either Walter by decision plus 125. A sprinkle on submission is always worth it. He did just get a heel hook against one of the Taffa brothers. And if you want to do a double chance submission or decision, that's minus 155. And that's probably the one that I'm going to go with personally. But yeah, I would say Walter Walker is probably the pick here. The caveat being if Donatel Mays lands a big shot early. But I do see him being able to secure the takedown. And if he does get that takedown, Donatel Mays has terrible grappling. All right, next fight, Vince Morales versus Elijah Smith. So these are pretty evenly matched guys. The odds are going to come in probably around a pick 'em. What I'm seeing on DraftKings is a plus 120 and a minus 140. Both of these guys, extremely scrappy, durable, good cardio. They're just well-rounded MMA guys who have been training MMA. I wouldn't really call either of them specialists necessarily. You could even see their statistics from everything from their physical attributes to their striking and takedown accuracies are very similar. One thing that I would point out, I would give Smith definitely an advantage in the wrestling. He shoots a very high volume of at least the offensive wrestling. His defensive wrestling leaves a lot to be desired, but he shoots a lot of takedowns. You can see, don't be misled by his takedown average. He hasn't really had enough fights in the UFC for that to matter a lot. But that's the one area where I would see him having an advantage, just because they're so evenly matched in every other regard. I will pick Elijah Smith as the slight favorite. I probably would leave this pick out of your parlays. It's a pretty close fight. But a moneyline bet on Elijah Smith is great. And then if you want to make it a little spicy and do Elijah Smith by decision, that's actually at plus money, plus 110. But honestly, at minus 140, I'll just take the money line because that's not really great value, the plus 110. Next up, this is a really fun fight. We have Gabriel Bonfim. He's going to be fighting Chaos Williams. I've been watching Chaos Williams for a while. He actually fought the guy who trains out of my gym, my teammate Matthew Semmelsberger a while back. They had a really close 3-round war. Definitely go back and watch that. It's a really, really good fight. But Chaos Williams a little bit one-dimensional. He's got big power. He's got great boxing. And he's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He doesn't ever shoot takedowns. Takedown defense is okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot to be desired. Bonfim, on the other hand, I will say I don't think he's quite as durable as Chaos Williams, but this dude's a dynamo everywhere. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's got good wrestling. He's got very creative striking. We watched him win his first fight in the UFC via flying knee. Him and his brother both have been phenomenal since entering the UFC. I'm going to go with Bonfim. You can parlay Bonfim over 1.5, same game parlay, and that's going to pay plus money. Bonfim by decision is also at plus 250. I don't think Chaos has ever been finished on the feet in the UFC. The one caveat that I'll say is I think there is a real chance for Bonfim to get a submission. That's also sitting at plus 185. So I would say Bonfim likely by submission or decision. And let me just check what the double chance for that is at. Double chance for Bonfim by submission decision is only a minus 150. That's a pretty good line. He could knock out Chaos, but Chaos has a hell of a chin. That's a pretty good value. Next fight is going to be Jesus Aguilar versus Rafael Estevam. And Jesus Aguilar, while he has looked good recently, he is going to come into this. King, can you scroll on to the next one? There we go. Yeah, Estevam versus Aguilar. Thank you. Yeah, so Aguilar, he's coming in here as a big dog. I believe he's coming off of a guillotine choke win in his last fight. He's had a couple good subs in the UFC. He's got decent boxing, good chin. But Estevam, just a massive favorite. I don't love this line, and I am tempted to throw something on Aguilar as kind of a long shot here. I mean, Estevam is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. He should be the favorite. But minus 500 for two guys with just not that much pedigree in the UFC. I mean, we see favorites like this bust all the time. You guys tailed all our picks on Dana White Contender Series for 8 weeks. If you have a champion who has 6 title defenses and they're a minus 700, it's one thing. But, I mean, yes, Estevam's undefeated. He's fought some really good fighters. He has a win over Charles Johnson in his last fight. He's one fight in the UFC. One fight on Contender Series. One fight in the UFC. Aguilar, on the other hand, let's see. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 fights in the UFC, 3 wins. His only loss in the UFC is Tatsuro Taira, who just fought Brandon Royval for a title contender. He's got a great win over Shannon Ross. He knocked him out. Won a hard-fought decision against Mateus Mendoza, another hot prospect. And in his last fight, he choked out Stuart Nickel in 2 minutes, who also he was the underdog. So I'm going to say I'm gonna throw it in on Aguilar as an underdog pick. It's a plus 380, so just be mindful of the risk. And if you want to get real crazy, Aguilar by decision is at plus 750. Aguilar by submission is at plus 1200. And I do think he has one of the best guillotine chokes that I've seen in a long time. So I'm going to just throw my money on Aguilar and see what happens. Don't go heavy on that one. But definitely worth a sprinkle on the money line, on the submission, and or the decision. All right. Next up, we have... Oh, is that next on yours? Angel Hill versus Souza? Interesting. I have Gordon versus Ruzaboyev. But that's fine. I'll do either one. Huh. Guess it's not on there. Okay. That's fine. Let's go to Hill and Souza. All right. Angela Hill versus Caitlin Souza. I have a great fear of betting on Angela Hill. She keeps getting robbed for close decisions. It's happened in I think 3 of her last 4 fights. Her last fight, she had the significant striking advantage. 2 rounds out of 3, she had a pretty big gap in the striking exchanges. She basically negated 100% of her opponent's ground game, but her opponent looked better. Counterpunchers don't always look so good. She looked better with her octagon control, even though she missed an extremely high percentage of her shots, and Angela Hill got the loss. Her fighting style is not conducive to win decisions at this point, it seems, and she's not finishing anyone. I mean, I don't know when the last time she's finished someone is, but it must be many years. Caitlin Souza, on the other hand, also I think she's a little bit better rounded than Angela Hill. She does have that very aggressive, power-heavy Brazilian style of kickboxing. She's pretty half-decent wrestling for sure. Good jiu-jitsu. She's only sitting at a minus 115. I know Angela Hill's a vet. She's got a lot more experience. She's fought some of the best in the world. But I think at that line, I think it's an excellent value on Souza, especially looking at, if you look at Angela Hill's last 5 fights. And I think, again, I'm not sure what it is about her fighting style, but she keeps getting screwed out of decisions. So I'm going to rock with Caitlin Souza for this one at minus 115. Now we have Connor Matthews versus Jose Delgado. And listen, on paper, this is a layup for Jose Delgado. He's sitting at a minus 410. As far as prop bets, I mean, most people are betting on him to win by KO. Could be a decision too. It's a 3-round fight. Connor Matthews is a durable guy. But that being said, it's just betting on the money line on this. You're not really going to get great value. I kind of like the over 1.5 at minus 180. I think that's the best value I see here. I don't hate Delgado by KO either, but I'm just not 100% confident. And after losing KO bets on Rufy and losing KO bets on all these other fighters, I just feel a little weird betting these KOs in these 3-round fights, especially with guys who we haven't seen enough of yet. I'm going to say the official pick for this fight is the over 1.5 around minus 180. And I'm not really going to touch the rest of it. Oh, this is a great one. Rodolfo Vieira versus Andre Petroski. I am all over the map with this fight. First thing I'll say is Andre Petroski has looked like a freaking killer his last 2 fights. Who was the last person he fought? I think it was Dylan Budka. It's a guy out of Maryland. But, I mean, I think he 30-26'd him or 30-25'd him. Yeah, it was Dylan Budka. There you go. He looked like an absolute world beater against Josh Friend, which I think he was actually the underdog on that card. But Petroski has really embraced the wrestling. He has extremely high-level wrestling, extremely high-level jiu-jitsu. He's really embraced that with his fighting style recently, and he's just been absolutely dominating people on the ground. He did recently lose a grappling match to Patrick Downey, but we'll say that's excusable. That's one of the best wrestlers that come out of North America. Rodolfo Vieira, on the other hand, kind of your cliche, classic high-level Brazilian UFC competitor. Extremely, extremely high-level jiu-jitsu. Believe he has won ADCC as well. Good record in the UFC, 5-2. He's choked out some pretty high-level grapplers in the UFC. He's specifically excels at head and arm triangles. He hit Armin Petrosian with a head and arm triangle. He hit Derek Brunson with a head and arm triangle. He hit Cody Brundage with a head and arm triangle. Choked out Dustin Stolfus. So you can see his submission game, especially at the UFC level, is very, very high level. However, he also has been submitted. Fluffy Hernandez was able to hit him with a guillotine choke. That is the only choke of his whole career. Wow. Yep, just Fluffy Hernandez. Props to you, Fluffy. And let's see here. He's also lost decisions against most of the strikers he's fought. He did lose a decision to Chris Curtis around the time Chris Curtis entered the UFC. So essentially, this is a good matchup for Petrosian in the sense that because of his superior wrestling, he should be able to keep it on the feet. The problem with that is neither of these guys are fantastic on the feet. I like I said, I was all over the place on this fight. I was going back and forth, but Adolfo Vieira is a minus 290. I think at plus 235, I have to take Petroski, especially with he hasn't lost 1 minute in his last 2 fights. I got to go with Petroski. And if it comes down to wrestling versus jiu-jitsu, I'm going to side with Petroski's wrestling because he has the jiu-jitsu awareness to avoid subs. So if you can avoid subs and control position and you're as conservative as Petroski, that's a good recipe to beat a guy like Vieira. So I'm going to take the underdog money on Petroski. All right. We're coming down to the last couple fights here. We're on the main card. We got Ismail Bonfim, the brother of the previously discussed Gabriel Bonfim, and he's going to be fighting Saidkov, Nazim Saidkov, who I believe is a UFC newcomer, although Israel Bonfim himself is not super experienced in the UFC. The lines are in favor of Ismail Bonfim. They actually opened at a minus 160, and they have moved now to a minus 230. He's looked really good in his UFC fights as of thus far, so that makes sense. But that being said, Saidkov is going to bring one thing to the table that is something of a kryptonite for Bonfim. So far, Bonfim in every fight that he's had the superior wrestling and grappling. It's very likely, although he may have these superior submission threats, that Nazim Saidkov will bring a smothering wrestling style. Oh, I'm sorry. He has actually competed in the UFC 3 times now. But he will bring a smothering wrestling style that Bonfim will have trouble dealing with. We've seen him clock very good performances against very, very high wrestlers in the UFC. He actually recently choked out Terrence McKinney. Sorry, I must have been confusing him with someone else. He's had 3 fights in the UFC already. Yes, I remember this fight. He choked out Terrence McKinney, rear naked choke, took him down and took his back. For those of you guys who don't know, Terrence McKinney was an Olympic qualifier for the American wrestling team, which is one of the best wrestling teams in the world. So the wrestling from Terrence McKinney is very, very high level. If you can choke a guy like that out, your grappling's a real threat. On the feet, it's all Bonfim all day. I think a lot of this match will come down to if Saidkov can control top control or not. That being said, the grappling of Bonfim is still very, very high level. I think it will be enough to at least neutralize the threat in that department from Saidkov. I don't think he's better than Saidkov in that department. But because I think this fight will play out on the feet, I have to strongly side with Ismail Bonfim. All right, next fight up. We talked about him before, Dylan Budka, who just basically got 30-25 by Edmen Shahbazyan. And I'm just going to make this one really, really simple. I really, really strongly believe in Edmen Shahbazyan's chances here. I know he has kind of the Michael Johnson effect where he loses all these fights he's supposed to win. But I hate to talk this way about a Maryland guy, but I really think Dylan Budka is one of the worst fighters in the UFC. Listen, being one of the worst fighters in the UFC still means you're a damn good fighter. But I really think he's one of the worst fighters in the UFC currently on the roster today. So Edmen Shahbazyan by KO lines at plus 125. It's not a lock, but I think it's a very, very good bet, and I'll be betting that myself. Moving on, Calvin Kattar versus Youssef Zalal. What more can I say about Youssef Zalal? The dude's been on an absolute tear. Calvin Kattar, crafty vet, good boxing. Been through a ton of injuries over his last couple fights. Pretty much been dealing with nagging injuries since that Max Holloway fight in 2020. Looked amazing in his comeback against Giga Chikadze, but then since then he's just not had it. Lost his fight to Josh Emmett after that. Got absolutely manhandled by Aljamain Sterling. I'm going to go with the person here who's trending up, not trending down, Youssef Zalal. That line's at a minus 485. I don't really love it. However, Youssef Zalal has finished most of his last couple fights by submission, so I like the plus 275 prop for a submission. You can also try the minus 150 for a decision, but I got burned on a couple of Youssef Zalal decisions, so I'm going to be riding the submission this card. And although Calvin Kattar has good counter grappling, he was a decent wrestler all the way up until high school. He does have those fundamentals. I think the jiu-jitsu game from Youssef Zalal will be too much for him to handle. This is out with the old and with the new, so to speak. And now on to the main event. We have RoboCop, Gregory Rodrigues, who loves to swing and bang, but is also a 4-time ADCC champion with a mean submission game that for some reason he just refuses to use in the UFC. And Jared, the Gorilla Cannonier, I believe that's his nickname. And he's coming off of a pretty tough loss to Caio Borralho, I believe it was. Yeah, Caio Borralho starched him. He also lost to Imavov right before that. It's kind of the same story as the last fight. Jared Cannonier is immensely talented, but the dude's pushing 40, or I think 40, 41 now. He's getting up there in years. He's been through a lot of wars. I think his age is finally starting to show, and not just his age, but there's a new age of MMA. There's new techniques out there. There's new tricks, and I think some of these new young prospects are showing him things he hasn't seen before. He's still tough as nails. He's still physically in great shape. But listen, RoboCop's been on a tear. Yeah, he got knocked out by Bruno Ferreira, but anyone can get caught with a punch like that. RoboCop is a freaking beast. I think he's going to have huge advantage over Cannonier in the grappling department if it goes there. And I think between the two of them, he has a lot more of his chin left. They're both going to be power hitters. They're both going to punch with the force of 1,000 armies. But who's going to be able to take the punch? I think Rodrigues is going to be able to take the punch better. Not only that, but again, going on the side of momentum, Rodrigues is on the way up, Cannonier is on the way down. Now, I bet for Borralho to finish Cannonier, and that burned me. But that being said, the plus 100 on Gregory Rodrigues by KO over 5 rounds, I really like that. I really, really like that. I'm definitely going to put that in. I usually like throwing a little sprinkle on Rodrigues for submission just because of his grappling accolades, but he just seems to refuse to use any grappling in the UFC. It seems like he's trying to prove a point, so I'm just not touching that anymore. And then the money line's good enough for a bet, yes, if it's a big bet, but probably better utilized as a parlay piece. It's at minus 230. That brings us through our full card rundown. I hope I come out of this looking a lot better than I looked last week. Just some quick parlays that I threw together for you guys. I parlayed Cavalcanti and Bonfim to hit about even money. I parlayed the Bonfim brothers to hit slight plus money. And I parlayed Edmund Shabazian and Walter Walker for even money. And give you guys one D-Gen parlay for all of you guys like King, who like to do your 12-leggers. Not that D-Gen. We give you a 5-legger that pays about 5 to 1. It's pretty much all favorites on here. Some of them I just mentioned. Bonfim Brothers, that's 2, all money line. Jacqueline Cavalcanti, that's 3. Edmund Shabazian, that's 4. Walter Walker, that's 5. I put 25 to win 150. So like I said, hopefully we make up for UFC 312. Guys, don't forget, free Brandon Royval autograph card. The MMA Pickers, which is right down here. That is my user on Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me on Instagram. Send me any slip of you tailing a bet, just a message, hi, or a screenshot of you following the page, and you will be entered to win. I will announce a username on this stream, and then all you have to do is message me, and I will ship you the card. You don't have to pay for shipping. You don't have to pay for the card. 100% free. This is what happens when I call Tatiana Suarez the next freaking Khabib. I make up for my mistakes.